Just before lunch, I thought it will be appropriate to talk about risk, about how to make decisions, and about crocodile. I promise it will make sense in a few minutes. Just a few words about myself so that you understand what I do and what I'm going to talk about. So I've had the chance to work for a really great company and scale them from 1 to 100 million. So I don't really know the 0 to 1. I don't really know the 100 million plus. I know this phase. The 1 to 100 million, that's the phase I know, so that's the one I'm going to talk about. My latest venture, TravelPerk, business travel platform, and we've grown extremely fast, and we have done some interesting stuff in order to grow so fast. But before I get started and I start talking about risk, I have a little disclaimer. This is me, underwater. I'm a scuba diver with a crocodile. I don't recommend to do that. Let's make that super clear. This is not a good thing to do. However, that's a really good metaphor about you as a startup. You will have to dive into something that's really dangerous, where you don't really know what you are getting into. The good news is you might not lose your arm. That's the good news. There might be high stake, but that's probably not such high stake. And so what I'm going to talk about is risk. So we have had wonderful presentation before, incredibly inspiring. Here I'm going to talk more about framework, about how do you make decision about taking risk, whether it's to go from a sales-driven approach to a product-led approach, whether it is to enter a new market, it's how do you make the decision. Let's start with novelty. Why novelty? Because when you start a company, and the first presentation from the VP Marketing of HubSpot was fantastic on this topic, it is very unlikely, if not impossible, that your go-to-market will get you all the way from 1 to 100. You will have to enter a new market. You will have to enter a new segment. You will have to change your go-to-market. And the question is, how do you do that? So at TravelPerk and Advent, we have defined framework on how to do it. So here I'm going to take the example of a new geography, entering a new market, but the same could apply to entering a new segment or launching a new market. So as you can see here, what you want to do is not think about sales or marketing first. First, you want to assess objectively how good is your product for this new segment. So I'm going to give you a very clear example. At both Advent and at TravelPerk, we tried to enter the German market. I don't know if any of you have tried to do it. It's really hard. It's well known to be very hard, almost as hard as the French market, but not that much. Obviously know this one pretty well. And when we did it at TravelPerk, we had a look at the German business travel market, which is where we are. We had a look at the competition on this market. And then we developed the necessary feature for this market. We translated the platform. We translated all the knowledge base. We recruited German-speaking agents. And so we had a really good go-to-market. Then and only then, we had a look at marketing and sales. Why? Because one of the biggest mistakes we see is that startup thinks that the risk is to set up the office. The risk is not to set up the office. The risk is to have an office with a very inferior product to the competition. And so we define this framework where we go through each of them, then we define a rating, and then this rating corresponds to a playbook. So we have 3 levels of maturity, 1 to 3. 1 is very mature, 2 is intermediary, 3 is immature. And for each of them, we have a playbook associated with it. So as an example, that's our playbook for tier 1 maturity. The product is ready, the support is ready, we have sales and marketing support in the market, we can put an office on the ground, we can start doing PR, and we can really enter this market. On the other end of the spectrum, what you don't want to do is what we did actually, and it was my decision, so I own it, Advent, where our product was not fully ready for the German market. We're like, it works in the US, we'll work in Germany. No, it doesn't. And we recruited a fantastic team, and then we hit the wall. We hit the wall because the mythology of fake it until you make it only gets you so far. If there are objectively better product on the market, people are going to use this better product. they're not going to use your product. And you might say, okay, great, but if my product is not ready, what do I do? What's the playbook? The playbook that we have for either a new segment, so moving from SMB to enterprise, or a new geography, is that you want to limit the risk. You want to take the risk, but you want to control it. And the way to control it is to recruit a small team in your main HQ and dedicate it to them. Dedicate that to this specific market that you want to learn and improve. So as an example, we do that at the moment with Eastern Europe. Because we have a pretty good product for Eastern European company, but we can't support them in their native language. Our inventory is not perfect everywhere. So we just build one team internally, and we are learning and improving. And as we go through this process, they will go through a different level of maturity. Does that make sense? So this is a really important framework about how you make decision to move or to add one new go-to-market strategy. Let's talk about the second part, about uncertainty. This is what we all have. Why? Because if you are all here, you are not here to build a lifestyle company. I doubt you will have decided to attend Traction if you just wanted to build a small, nice, cute software company or anything else you do. You are here because you want to build a world-changing technology. And when you do that, by definition, you are doing something that has never been done before. Because if it has been done before, you will grow like the rest of the world. 5% a year is a good year, not 200% a year. Like it's only when you do something radically different that you grow that fast. And the impact of this is you have a lot of uncertainty. And when you have uncertainty in executive team, you end up with a situation like this. So there is one topic to be discussed. And imagine this kind of exec or board meeting. On one hand of the spectrum, you have the person that will say, we are a data-driven company. We need more data in order to launch this market, just fill the gaps. But the problem is that the data doesn't exist because you are creating something new. On the other end of the spectrum, you have the intuitive person. Like, no, I feel we need to go to the Australian market. I feel we are ready for the enterprise market. No data, nothing, just a feeling. It's nice. Makes for interesting discussion as well. And in the middle, there is reality. And the reality is you don't want to end up in an analysis paralysis of not making the decision because you don't have the data, and you don't want to just follow an intuition because otherwise you're going to go nowhere. The question is, how do you do that? So I'm going to explain you a framework and then use an example to show you how it's being used. So most of you are in marketing and growth and sales or commercial, so you will know this pretty well. Hypothesis, iteration, feedback, keep going. You have seen that a million times. But what's interesting is while we will use that extensively for A/B testing every single landing page, every single AdWords ads we will have, we will not do that for the biggest decision we have to make as a company. What I mean by that is when you choose a new go-to-market, when you choose a new segment, you don't know everything. But what you can do is to define the hypothesis of success. Let me give you an example. Some of you might have noticed if you buy your ticket at the end of the flow, you could buy your plane or your hotel with TravelPerk. That's not the interesting part of it. What's interesting is how we launch that and how does that explain this process. Let's go back here. About a year and a half ago, somebody in our exec team had the intuition to say, we do business travel. Let's meet, to take the example described recently, let's meet the end user where they are. Where do people go for business travel? They go to conferences. So let's try to sponsor a conference. But we don't want to just have a booth because actually the experience of business travel is when you travel, not when you are at the event. It's too late. So we decided to go to conferences and say, hey, can we organize travel for you so that we are in the flow of booking? That sounds like a good idea. The problem is there was no data because nobody has done it before. So we could have got stuck at that stage forever. On the other end of the spectrum, we had somebody that said, no, it's obviously a good idea. Like, don't over-engineer it, just go for it. Cool, but how do I know if it's being successful or not? So what we did is we decompose all the process into different steps. How many people will search, how many people will book, how many people will become customer. That sounds very simple, but we just defined the hypothesis. Were the hypothesis totally invented? Yes, of course. It was never done before. But it's like the scientific formula. You define the hypothesis so that you can check it after. So we defined it, we did a first event. And we realized that people search, but nobody book. We had a look again, and we're like, oh, the flow is so clunky that nobody will ever book. We iterate, we change the flow. Second event. That was good, but then everybody booked, but nobody became customer. We realized that we did a really good job getting the end user, but to use the word from the previous speaker, we didn't get the team. So cool, but we are a B2B company, so only getting end user is not enough. And so we did that 3 or 4 times, and now it's one of our largest go-to-market strategy. And if you think back at this, if we will have been in the same room and we'll have tried to get the data, we'll have never done it. If we will have just listened to the person that was saying, it's obvious, it's going to work, we will have stopped after the first one. Why? Because the first one was a failure. We didn't get what we wanted. But because we defined the hypothesis, because we could unpack the reason about why it was successful or why it was failing, then we could discover this amazing go-to-market. Does that make sense? All right, and just before lunch, I'm going to finish with mindset. I'm not going to talk about growth mindset. It's also an amazing book, but I think 2,000 people have talked about it before me. I'm actually going to talk about something slightly controversial, but I'm French, so you probably expect that from me anyway. It's that or going on strike, and so I think I'll take the controversial part of it. Why? Because as you grow, one of the main decisions you need to make is who is joining your company. That's obvious. But the most important one actually is not so much who, but when. Let me explain. In my view, and in the view of a few other people, there are really 3 different types of executive. And here I will only talk about VP, director, or C-level. I will probably not draw the same conclusion for individual contributor. You have the creator. The creator are the people who will have no real product market fit, don't really know where they are going, and they will be very intuitive. They will take a lot of risk because they have actually nothing really to lose. They don't need to balance 2 different go-to-market, like it's creation. Then you have the builder. The builder, they have something that works, and they need to repeat. They need to iterate. They need to take risk, which is what I've tried to explain today. And then you have the optimizer. The company is doing really well, and now you want to optimize it. You want to make more money. You want to make more margin. And each of these steps are absolutely necessary in the trajectory of a company. So I'm not saying that one step is superior to the other. However, one of the big mistakes, at least I have done, and I've seen a few companies doing, is the following. Let's imagine you have a 50 people sales company, and you want to grow it to 500 salespeople. And you meet this amazing, sorry, I hope there is nobody from Salesforce. I have nothing against you. I love you, Salesforce. You meet this amazing director of sales from Salesforce. And she has managed 500 salespeople for the past 10 years. And you feel she's going to tell you what the future looks like. It's going to be obvious, like she knows how to get there. Yes, but you forget one key question, which is she inherited 500 people. And then she optimized it. And then she ran the division really well, but she didn't build the division. And this is a completely different process to have a certain organization and to build the organization. And so what I want to kind of leave you with is when you want to recruit people and when you are in the building phase, please ask them, especially if they come from a very large company, what have you built? And if they say, oh, I've been part of this project, you listen nicely, empathetically, and then you ask them, what have you done? Because it's very different to have a commission plan, to have a PR strategy and tweak it, than to have a blank piece of paper and design the PR strategy for the company for the first time. It's not, one is not superior to the other. It's structurally radically different. So I really invite you that as you start, for some of you, you will probably go from this phase to this phase. As you start going from the creation to the building, from going from seeing product market fit to repeating the market fit, get people who know how to build. Don't just get seduced by people who come from very large companies who might not have built. I have nothing about people who come from very large companies. I worked for Citrix for a while. But you want people who know how to build something. And that's incredibly important. If you want to go to this address, travelperk.com/traction, you can actually download the slide. We have posted the slide here if you are interested. And I will be here today, I will be here tomorrow, so if you want to discuss about risk, scale up, high growth, or crocodile, feel free to come and see me. Thank you.
Where did you swim with the crocodile?
I swam with the crocodile on a small set of islands between Cuba and Cayman Islands.
Wow.
And yeah, I don't recommend. Like, this is not the point. Like, you shouldn't do it. I actually gave the name to this crocodile El Niño. For those who speak Spanish, it's like, I think it's very appropriate.
I guess he liked it because you have all of your limbs here. So
Yeah. Or maybe I was not appetizing enough. That's the other theory.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
I need some traction. You need some traction. Let's get some traction.